So yeah, it's a while I was thinking I was ADHD all into my 20s. So I started self-medicating with like stimulants like Adderall and Ritalin. Um, and the thing is that when it comes to anxiety and OCD, there is kind of like this inner monologue that exists that kind of
Mhm.
directs you on where you're going. That inner monologue kind of disappears on Ritalin and Adderall. So you are
Yeah.
able to focus, but you're still kind of edgy. You know, you're still kind of like, want to get a lot of work done. You want to move fast on things,
Yeah.
and when things wear off, that's when the chaos starts coming in.
Yeah.
Um,
Whoa. I would have never guessed that people would not people. I guess I would never think that it could be that. Like I've never even questioned. And I don't know, the OCD runs in my family and so does ADD, but not together. I don't think anybody has it together. And I guess in the research, they were saying that that's like rare, but they never said that some people mistake it for OCD. That's crazy. Do you want to tell us what OCD? I should probably introduce you by this is
yeah,
TickyTack, everybody. Hello.
how's it going, everyone?
I was going to say you're a coder. Is that what you do?
Yeah. So I've been programming for about like 15 years now.
Wow.
Um, yeah. So that's it. That's my life, and it does pay well.
Yeah. Is it a good job for somebody that it has like OCD or is it
I would say that it's good for just people with mental illness in general.
really?
Because the type of culture that you find in like programming and coding is that you could take days off because everybody understands you really only like get most of your work done like 2-3 days a week. There's a lot of work at home opportunities, so you could like take a nap here and there, and everybody would be cool with it.
Do you have
So
to talk to people?
Oh yeah, it's
Wow.
so I'm having to talk to people every single day, but it's because my role is upgraded to what's called a release engineer.
Huh.
So the idea is I have to communicate with multiple teams and get them
Mhm.
all coordinated on their code basis before submitting it out to the world.
Is
Um,
it
so
frustrating to do that?
Um, it can be. It definitely can be frustrating, especially during these holiday seasons, because that's usually when the big bulk of work comes in. But I would say that after I've properly got like my therapy and got good on my medications, it's not bad at all anymore.
So
Um, Go
I
ahead.
want to ask you, like, when did you notice that something was different in the way that you would think or how it impacted your life?
So do you want to start at when I noticed that there may be something off with my mind and I started cluing in
Yeah.
to the disease? Okay. Um, so I would say that it was probably around like 23, 24. Because beforehand, I would say that I would attribute a lot of things to trauma. Just like, had a poor childhood, didn't have the greatest parents, things of that nature. But around like 23 is when I can kind of just be like, okay, well, I kind of leveled out from a lot of like the trauma issues. Now I'm just dealing with something else that is not quite right within my head compared to everybody else. I'd say what affected me most is that I would take things extremely critical. It would
Mm.
be difficult for me to hold on to a job. Like I would cycle out of jobs like every 6 months. It was, and I felt like I always had to sleep a lot because that was like my coping mechanism to whenever like there was too much things going on in my head, I would try to sleep because I knew after I woke up things would clear up quite a bit.
Mhm.
Um, and those were patterns that just most people don't deal with.
Yeah. Did you feel like you were in a fishbowl and everybody was functioning in a different way than you were? That's how I kind of felt with depression.
I would say somewhat yes, but I also just couldn't understand how other people think. So I was just so caught up in trying to adapt into how I can function within the world.
Yeah.
So I guess I was just so focused on doing that I never really moved on. When it comes to depression, I can't really say I ever had any sort of major depressive episodes.
Yeah.
Um,
Just like
it's
being really tired, but like
yeah.
not, you don't like sunsets anymore. You just like
Hmm.
don't have joy. But just even functioning, like if you did have to go and do something, you would like look at everybody and wonder, can they just like act without thinking about anything? And it was like weird to me. I don't know. I feel like everybody got a handbook on how to behave, and I just didn't get the book.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I would say there is like some ticks of mine where I would always question or doubt like the things that I would say or the things that I would do. Um
Really? Like
yeah,
what?
there was so just how I was like standing in front of people, even if it's just like I'm in a grocery store shopping. I always had kind of like the sense of people like was always watching me.
Yeah,
Or sometimes, it would be something as simple as I'm hungry and I go to the kitchen to look for food, and I just keep pacing back and forth between the fridge and the cabinet, worried that I'll make the wrong decision on whatever food choice that I make.
that's
So,
what stuck out to me when we talked. Either I
mm,
forget if it was on camera or off camera. I was like, wait, so if you have something like OCD, that means every single decision is like also another decision. It's like almost like meta thinking. I don't know how to
mm.
like, and are there some times where you just won't eat because you're like,
Oh
I
yeah.
just don't even want to do this?
Oh yeah. I would say that was great for my diet because it's
Oh,
I would just pace back and forth and then not eat, and it's like, oh, okay, I got some exercise, and I'm losing
yeah.
some pounds.
Yeah. Whoa. That
uh
sounds so debilitating. Like
it can
underrated.
be.
Yeah.
Um I would say that it also trails into kind of like well, it is obsessive thoughts. That's the whole diagnosis. But I used to be fond into like bodybuilding and dieting. So when I could get into those routines, I could be like doing a lot of meal prep, doing a lot of exercising, and I'd be making some really great results. But I'd be lacking on actually like doing my work. It's like I couldn't think about my work anymore. I couldn't think about, cleaning up my house afterwards anymore. It's like I was just fixated on doing that one goal, that one thing. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, it turns out there's an overlap in bodybuilding and OCD. Um,
Really?
yeah,
I didn't know.
it's the same kind of obsession where uh, it's an overlap between a body image disorder
BDD
where
or something?
something like that, and then also just the obsessive compulsive to being able to fixate on that type of routine and see results. It's almost like a coping mechanism or a therapy.
Oh. So it's almost like automated, but like still obsessive.
Yeah.
That's the part where it's like, how is it I don't know how to word this, but it's like, so there's almost like manic is a bad word, but like almost like manic periods of obsession. And then do you find a new obsession? Like, how does that happen? Like, are you doing the bodybuilding and then it turns into something else that you'll
Yeah.
do for a couple months?
Yeah. So after bodybuilding, I got into motorcycles.
Oh,
So I ended up quitting my coding job and went and worked at like a motorcycle mechanic shop.
wait,
And I
that's so
learned so
cool.
much about that. Yeah, I would say that it is kind of interesting being able to like, flip a switch and just take on a new task and then learn it really quickly.
Yeah.
Um, or just like take on a project and be able to just get it done super fast and have like great results come from it. But it's also really taxing. Like there is like a lot of energy that could be expended on it, and it could drain you. So
Yeah.
there are like those periods where it's like, okay, well, I'm done. I'm just going to be lazy and sitting around the house. But that's usually when like the hygiene and the mess within the house starts increasing is usually on like those down periods.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about contamination OCD. I
Um,
don't, do you think that's gone up after COVID?
um, it's maybe so that's one thing that I found interesting because so to get into my past a bit, I had a boyfriend who was diagnosed with OCD, but it really was the compulsives of having to stay clean, having to make sure objects were in place in the right order and things like that. Um, and So this is where I kind of felt like I was never OCD or never suffered with anxiety because that was my perception of what it was. I
That's what
didn't,
we all think it is at first. I mean,
yeah,
I know it, but like people think of OCD as like the washing your hands all the time and like making things face the right way. So,
yeah,
so when you were dating this guy who had that, you were not diagnosed yet.
correct. It, I probably understood that I was like, I was socially anxious because it was difficult for me to like leave the house and actually like do things
Yeah.
because of what I mentioned earlier, the underlying, like, I feel like people are constantly watching me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, since I knew his OCD, I never thought that my inner monologue is what actually constitutes like OCD, is that constant obsession of thought onto a
Yeah.
particular thing, not obsession on action.
Yeah. Whoa. So when did you realize? Did he
Um,
was he like, maybe you have something similar? Because I heard a lot of people that figured out it was like the thought pattern that they went undiagnosed for like 20 years, something like late diagnoses, or they're off by 10 years. That's what it was. They don't get, I was like, that's a long time to be misdiagnosed.
yeah, so I wasn't actually diagnosed until I was 31. I'm going to be turning 35 here in about a month.
Oh my God.
Um, Yeah, and I actually didn't really think much of it, but going back to the original question, so my boyfriend, he didn't believe that I had any sort of like disorders. He thought that actually, in a way, he thought I was more bipolar than anything else.
Really?
Um, yeah, because of how I would get frustrated at things.
Yeah.
He thought that was like a symptom of like bipolar disorder, but the
Mm.
frustration was mostly just coming from not being able to focus properly on a task, or just being in these like loops of like, trying to decide what to eat. Those days would get frustrating.
Oh,
Um, yeah, but getting diagnosed, I never actually went in wanting to be diagnosed by anything. Um, I was in a period of I had a pulmonary embolism, which kind of like put me in a midlife crisis mode.
oh my God.
Um,
That's
yeah,
serious.
yeah, and just I found a really good doctor. It was recommended by the hospital. I didn't really take it seriously. I thought that like, oh, I got an embolism, but hey, I'm healthy. I've been working out a lot. I'll just keep doing the thing that I'm doing.
Yeah.
Um, and it turns out that my PCP that I was going into more often, she also has a degree in psychology and particularly in things like drug addictions and OCD.
Yeah.
So she was able to point it out like a lot of the patterns like immediately, and she just recommended that I take some of the medication that she prescribes, and within about a week of taking it, that inner monologue just like disappeared. That one thing that I was self-medicating this entire time with Adderall, it's like that was the one thing that disappeared, but it wasn't like I wasn't like weaned out because I wasn't on a stimulant.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I'm so surprised. Like that. I never hear about a doctor or a PCP even like noticing something like that because it's in your head. I mean, I
Mhm.
guess because you were using other substances that maybe but I feel like a lot of doctors treat patients as like drug seeking. That's what I hear all the time. So that was like awesome that she was able to spot that. That's crazy.
I think what really helped is that uh, so she scheduled like an entire hour on like the second meeting we went in there,
Wow.
so we could just talk about things, and I was just straight open with her about all like my drug uses, the things that I struggled with, just goals and objectives going forward. It's like she was really actually being a psychologist at that moment more than anything. um
I
and
love to
so
hear.
yeah, I would say we have a really good relationship. It's like anytime I could call her for an appointment, and it's literally just like a conversation for like 20, 30 minutes of whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Were you
but
ever like hesitant to go on the meds?
yeah, like I could say that in my mid 20s when I thought like things were unusual, I did seek some help at like psychologists, therapists, psychiatrists.
Yeah.
Um, And there was a few occasions where they would put me on meds, but then I would just stop it almost within days because it
Really?
always just never felt right. Um, yeah, it would just like make me sick, or it just wouldn't make me focused, and I was too busy with life, and I was like, I don't have time. I don't have time to be like down for like a couple of weeks on this stuff. So I would
Yeah.
just immediately stop it and just move on with my life.
Did they want to put you on like an SSRI,
Yeah,
or was it?
it's
Oh, okay. Because that
they're
takes like a
SSRIs.
while. Yeah, it takes a while for it to work. You almost feel worse before.
Yeah, I would say, but they also kind of like misdiagnosed me. That's they thought it was a combination of depression and ADHD.
Yeah.
So they were probably giving me the wrong regimen of medications, and that's
Yeah.
probably what affected like my mood swings and stuff during that time and just feeling ill. It wasn't the right meds.
Yeah. Whoa. What are some ways that if you were to give somebody advice, if they think they're struggling with something like this, like what are some things to look out for? Like I'm trying to think. Like was there ever a moment when you were going back and forth in the kitchen and you were like, this is probably not right?
Oh, it's I knew many times that it wasn't right, and that's where the frustration would come in because I would be like, "Damn it! Like, why are you doing this? Like, just break out of it. Just find something to eat." It's like I couldn't understand
Something.
why I had to go through these like repetitive motions.
It's
Uh,
biological. It's like 100% in the brain,
yeah,
which is crazy.
I would say to some degree, it probably does also constitute a little bit of my trauma in the past of why it exists. Um, because just to describe like what was going on is that I always had to tiptoe around my father because he was an alcoholic and he would get angry about anything.
Yeah.
Um, so that inherent like doubt of every single thing or every single choice that I want to make had to be there because I had to make sure I didn't like somehow piss off my dad, get him angry or anything like that. And I think that's kind of like
Very.
it kind of exacerbated the issues.
Whoa. I've heard that.
Mhm.
I've heard it's really obviously really bad to have a parent with alcoholism, but it's especially hard on the kids because the behavior is so erratic. A lot of people think like, oh, they just drink a lot. And it's like, no, I was a bartender and like one drink could make somebody switch like that, like so drastically. It almost was crazy to watch. I never realized that alcohol would even work that way. And so as a kid, it's probably so difficult. It's like you don't know when they're going to be pissed or not.
Yeah, well, also as a kid, you eventually start learning that all of this is kind of normal also. Um, so when I started getting into high school, I started realizing that the way I communicate was very harsh. It always like an angry tone. I was never actually like a happy kid, and it's I learned all those communications from my angry alcoholic father. So, and that was just the all I knew. That's all I knew how to communicate. So when I actually got out of the house when I was like 18, and got into the city, I essentially had to relearn all these social skills of like, how people interact with life.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like meeting people's parents. Has that ever been hard where you meet people whose parents are normal and you're like, well, fuck.
No, it's in some
No?
sort of yeah, because of as a kid, I guess there was so much chaos in my life. I just didn't pay attention to those types of things. I would say that to some extent, I was like in a daze of life,
Yeah.
and those few opportunities I could get away from my dad was like the rest time. I could actually rest my brain a little bit, and not have to worry about things. And that's why I try to stay out of the house as much as possible.
What about your mom?
So my mom was caught up in like the same kind of like mindset. She was just trying to like survive. Um, but after my father passed away when I was 16, she went through her phase. I went through my phase, and come around like my mid 20s. my bond with my mother has become like really strong. Like we share
Oh,
everything with each other now.
I love
Um,
that. That's so
yeah, it's I would say
sorry
that's one.
about your dad. I know that's really hard, even though he's an asshole.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, like,
it's all in the past now. It's Yeah,
yeah,
in some ways, he did teach me some really interesting things because he was an engineer. So I was always exposed to like computers, and I
yeah,
had resources to actually learn some interesting things. It's just, he was just an evil person when he was when he was drinking.
drinking. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really what flipped the switch.
Did you ever struggle with alcohol, or was it just like a phase when
Um,
drinking?
Alcohol was never my thing.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Yeah, it's like it
Okay.
would always make me sick. It would always give me hangovers. I didn't like it, but I would chronically smoke weed.
Oh, fuck.
So yeah, that was my alternative. That was which I could say that probably didn't help my
I
social
feel like
anxiety and made it worse.
I feel like that would make it so bad. Like, I don't know. I'm super anti weed. Not anti. I know it helps some people. I just feel like it can harm more kids, like young adults or whatever, can make them psychotic. Scares
Yeah.
me.
Well, it's I was again using it as like self-medication because it's the idea was is that I would take the Adderall in order to get rid of the inner monologue, and then as soon as it wears off, I would smoke weed to just kind of like uh, calm
Oh,
myself down. But the thing is that um, it would
gives
allow me to
you anxiety.
chill. It allowed me to watch movies and just laugh my ass off, but I would never go outside because I still had that social anxiety. I did
Yeah.
it's and that's never healthy.
And did the medication that you went on later, did you realize, oh my God, I'm going outside, or oh my God, I'm like doing things without thinking about it? Did you notice it right away?
Oh yeah. It's yeah. It was after like the first week, and that inner monologue started disappearing. It just like I could do anything. It's like walking outside wasn't a big deal anymore. It wasn't worried about like a neighbor being out there and just looking at me and being like, "Oh, do we have to worry about the way I walk or something like that?" No, none of that anymore.
Were there any bad side effects that made you like not want to keep taking it, or were the pros so much? Did it outweigh so much? Sorry, I suck.
So there is one bit. There was one side effect, which is apathy, which
Oh,
it could kind of it puts you in a weird state of mind. It's so now what I do is that I try to cut back on this medication into lower doses until like I feel some of those anxieties come back, and then I'll raise it. So I'm kind of fluctuating in it now.
I would have no, I mean, I guess that makes sense that there's almost like that excitable component to like, I'm like thinking of how do you know when you're getting out of the apathy? It's like you kind of have to go towards the anxiety to lift it. Like makes sense, but then you can go too far.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
to some degree, anxiety is a good thing because
Oh,
it can be a motivator to get you to actually do things and get things done. And if you don't have any other like responses to inform you of the responsibilities you need to do, well, it's you're just kind of like laying there and being like, oh, I'm just kind of vegging. It doesn't matter. Everything feels the same.
did you ever get like stuck on meds, off meds, like just stuck where you're just like, well, maybe more so off meds, where you're just like, I have so much to do, but I literally won't act on anything? Or was it not really like that?
No, it's I don't think I've gotten to that point. No.
Okay, that's good. I mean, it all sounds like one of those, it sounds like something I feel like a lot of people don't like hear about, but probably more people are suffering. I Googled it. It was like 1% to 2% of the population. That's a lot.
Hmm.
Do you
Yeah,
ever
it's
meet anybody else who had exactly what you had? I know your boyfriend had the purely obsessional.
no, so I haven't met anybody. It's going to be interesting when I do. because
Yeah.
we'll probably have a lot to talk about.
Wow. Wow. What's actually going on in the brain? Do you know?
In what context?
Like I know it's the anterior singular cortex or whatever, but like what exactly is like misfiring in the brain? Do you know?
I actually don't know.
Really?
Um, yeah, it's I really don't know that much about the brain. Um,
What were you most what were some of your like focused like I read there was like religious thought patterns. There's like what else was there? Religious caught my eye because I was like, oh no, how do you like differentiate that between somebody who's religious? It just sounds it almost sounds like delusional or like really obsessed with morality. Does that ring a
hmm.
bell?
um,
Yours
what's
wasn't
in?
like that.
No, it's I would say that I never really took interest in the morality questions until after I got on medications, and I can actually like start reading a little bit more.
Whoa.
um,
Even when
I
you're apathetic, I'm just kidding. It's like,
it's
no.
yeah, it's apathy is definitely something that I want to steer clear from because it's not a good state for your mind. It's just not.
Have you read Carl
Mm-mm.
Jung's work?
No.
He was somebody that talked about, I don't think he called it OCD. I think at the time it was called like melancholy, which I thought would be depression. But he talks about OCD and his hypothesis was like it's almost like fractured self. Have you ever, did your psychotherapist ever talk about like, fuck, I forget what it's called. Shit. It's like having to deal with the unconscious and the conscious. It's like a battle or something. It almost feels like bipolar. That's why I was like, oh, when you said that you felt almost bipolar, your partner thought you were, I was like, I wonder if that had any correlation. I don't know. He's a little bit crazy. Some people like
Um,
him, some people don't.
it might be because when the aggression would come up, it wasn't necessarily um a conscious aggression. It was an unconscious aggression, in the sense
Wild.
that it's like I knew my conscious mind was going through these repetitive tasks, these like constant loops, but then my unconscious would be just like fuck all and just like
Wow.
um, I would just be a little bit more irritated at things, more angry about things.
Do you dream?
Yeah, quite a bit.
Really?
Yeah.
No way. Before meds?
So before meds, probably not as much. After meds, a little bit more.
That
Um,
they say if you dream, your stress response is like healthy. I was like,
hmm.
wait, stop. They say the older you get, the less you dream because of the stress. I was like, no shit. What do you dream about? Just out of curiosity. Is that a weird question?
No, it's wild things. I would say that it feels more like that I'm in a video game world than anything else. Just
Lucid?
yeah, I definitely have had like a lot of lucid dreaming.
Sounds like your subconscious or your unconscious younger self is trying to talk. I'm crazy.
Maybe. I'm actually, I'll get into this territory. So, when I was exploring with drugs, it's like exploring with like psychedelics.
Don't do
Um,
drugs, kids. Yeah.
don't do drugs.
That's
But it's, I guess I've just gotten so practiced, in taking those types of substances that, dreaming is a lot easier to kind of control. Like, I don't think
yeah.
I've ever really had a nightmare for like, 10 years.
That's good.
Um, yeah, it's and nightmares are just really rare, and it's not necessarily because they don't happen. It's just that I recognize I'm in a dream when a nightmare comes up. I'm just like, oh, okay, this weird ass thing that's in front of me right now that usually would scare me, I shouldn't be scared about it, and I just move on.
Whoa. That's crazy. Do you change
Mm.
it while you're in the dream? You're like, fuck no, I want a carnival or something when something's like about to go. No, I'm
uh,
just kidding.
oh, sometimes it's hard to change it. But it's easy to recognize what's going on and just go with the flow.
I like
That's
want
kind
to
of how I
know.
see it.
I want to be intrusive and know dreams where your younger self is your younger self in it or no?
Sometimes. Uh, The thing is that even though I don't have nightmares, there are occasionally dreams where my dad comes back, but it's not my alcoholic dad.
Oh, it's
It's
good, Dad.
somewhat. It's the weird thing is that he always comes back as a like, oh, I never died and I'm here now, and it turns into me just being pissed off at him, be like, well then why were you freaking gone for so long?
Oh my, I that just gave me literal goosebumps
Mhm,
because I've been reading this book by Carl Jung literally as I go to bed. And he gave an example that was exactly like that in the
mhm.
book. And it was
Huh.
like, yeah, it was like this, not the same thing, but it was a man who he had a dream that his wife was an alcoholic and like a degenerate and stuff. And she wasn't like that in uh like waking life or whatever. And he was talking about how um would he was like, at first you think it's about the actual relationship there, but what it's really about is the feminine and masculine, because both everybody has like both sides. And so if you have somebody in the dream that's of a specific gender, so for you it would be your dad, it would have to do with the masculine side of you or something. I don't know if it's 100%, but it was just like wild because if he's being nice, that means that, oh, fuck, he was saying the wife who's a degenerate. Oh, he didn't like his feminine side, and that he, or no, he was acting like a feminine, emotional, erratic woman. And that's like what that relationship represented. So yours is like a good thing because it was
Huh.
somebody good, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's my
Uh,
thoughts.
so whenever these types of dreams come up, specifically or my father coming in, it, he's being like a true, genuine father, and for me,
Oh,
I'm actually a lot younger than I am right now. It's like either in like teenage years, maybe like early 20s. So I think I can't really interpret exactly like what it means.
yeah.
But I imagine there is some sort of messaging on it that I haven't figured out yet.
Do you remember anything he said other than he's really there or something? I forget what it
Um,
was.
he not exactly, but he would try to joke a lot in order to try to like lighten up the mood, and I just wouldn't accept it.
Was he
You know,
funny in the dream or no?
um,
Funny.
no,
No.
it's
Wait, what's
just
his
bad.
name?
Colin.
Fucking Colin. Oh, so he's trying to joke with you and you're angry.
Yeah.
Hmm. Were you angry when he passed away?
Um, no, it's but I could say that so the one thing that I always key into is that even going through my 20s, I wish I had a dad to go back and ask those important questions of like, I have this situation in front of me right now. How am I supposed to act? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
At least some sort of validation that I'm going on the correct path. I'm going on the
Yeah.
correct direction. And that's one thing that I never had growing up through my 20s.
Yeah, that's like you said 16 when he passed away.
Yeah.
That's really hard. It's like
Yeah.
one of my biggest fears. So when I hear it, I'm just like,
The weirdest thing though is that I actually felt like more relief than anything else. Of course,
oh,
at the moment of him passing away, there was no feeling to it.
yeah,
It's undescribable as death, and I'm sure anybody who's experienced that with a close one, they know what I'm talking about.
parent.
But yeah, but going into 17, 18, honestly, it was just time for me to like do whatever the fuck I wanted. You
Yeah.
know,
And
it's
it
like
got easier with just you and your mom.
my mom was kind of like coping in her own way.
Oh,
She
wait, it was later that you guys rekindled. I'm sorry. Not
yeah, it's she decided to do a lot of traveling.
she
It's
left you.
uh kinda.
What's
It's
her name?
funny. I'm not going to bring that one up.
Okay, that's fine.
There's way too many jokes we can make about her name. Um,
Oh no.
um,
That's how she coped. Have you
Yeah,
ever tripped and like saw your parents as kids and stuff? I've never tripped before, so
no.
heard it's like wild. Sorry, I jump around. Did I cut you
Um,
off?
no, no, you're fine.
Oh, okay.
Um, a lot of my tripping experiences were always kind of like getting closer to God type like experiences.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's that's kind of what grounded me from like an atheist to like an agnostic more than anything.
Really? Do you
Yeah.
remember them? The trips?
Yeah.
Can you
It's
tell us?
I'll
Just
tell
what
you
we're
one
looking.
trip.
Okay.
I'll tell you one trip. So um it was fake LSD. I'll just say
Oh
that.
no, it's fake.
Yeah, it was the fake stuff that is very dangerous. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Um but pretty much it was like very anxiety inducing to begin with, and my friend was around. I actually had to ask him to leave just because I felt like I was having a bad trip. But eventually I did lay down. I went into the psychedelic world and I ended up shooting through the universe, and when I was shooting through this universe
No
I was
big.
I yeah, it's
Sorry.
I it's all good. um
You were
I'm
shooting
just
through the
I'm
universe.
yeah, yeah. It's like I was in a spaceship going like at light speed through the universe, and everything was stretching, all that kind of good stuff. Um, but while I was going through this, I was asking like some of the really deeper questions of like, okay, well, why do humans why are humans like horrible to each other?
Oh,
Why
oh,
what are the meaning behind like these emotions? Why do we interact in the ways that we do in such chaos? Um, Basically, kind of like the leading up to the meaning of life type questions.
yeah.
And my conclusion after all this was the meaning of life is to give it meaning. Um,
Whoa.
so the what that is that without the conscious mind that exists within us, we have no way to. There's no definition to things. There's no description to things. There's no attachment of emotion to actions or objects. It's like
It
the meaning
almost
of life
sounds
is
like,
for us to give meaning to everything.
yeah, it's almost like non-duality though.
Yeah. It is definitely a bit of hippy dippy like kind of shit when you really think about it, because it's a circular way of thinking, but
But it
uh,
makes
that,
sense because
yeah.
like atheists, we very materialist attribute this as that in a literal sense, and then you go on this trip and it's like, yeah, no, it's
Mm.
not true. It's kind of wild.
Yeah.
But did you experience like a warmth, like father figure is what I've heard, people that like see God or something on trips? Did you get that?
No, it's so the experience that I have was for every single question, there was an immediate answer. The only way that I could describe as like an infinite knowledge like scenario. So
Interesting.
it's like I would ask these questions and the answer just seems so obvious. Like, why didn't I know that? It was already there.
Oh, wow. Do you remember anything you asked specifically
No, not
other than
entirely.
that? No.
No.
How long were you tripping?
Um, I think it was only like 15, 20 minutes because when I came out of the trip,
Oh,
um, it's when I came out of the trip, it's my roommate came in to check up on me, and I the first thing I asked was like, "Am I dead?" It's
wait,
like,
it's so funny.
it's like, am I in purgatory or something like that? Am I in the between stage of to accept death? And my roommate was like, "No,
Oh
you're
no.
fine."
Oh my God. And that took you from being an atheist to agnostic like
Yeah,
overnight.
yeah.
Wow. That's wild.
Mm.
Have you looked into, I know I'm asking a lot of personal questions, but have you ever looked into the ketamine infusion therapy for OCD?
No, I haven't.
Oh, never mind them.
Yeah.
It was like another treatment option for people with mood disorders, depression, OCD, addictions, repetitive. It said repetitive behaviors. It didn't say OCD specifically. And I was like, oh, I wonder because it's kind of revolutionary right now. It's like one, you go to a doctor and they give you a needle, then you like trip. It's like administered by a doctor, and apparently people have gotten off meds that way. I thought it was interesting. Just
Um,
wondering.
I do believe there is some truth to that because after that trip that I had, I cut out all drugs cold turkey out of my life for like 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They say that. Yeah. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, it's all good. So pretty much I also like refocused my life in trying to get a well-established career. This is a time where it's like, yeah, I was coding, but I was just doing odd end jobs here and there.
Yeah.
Um, and this is the first time I actually decided that, okay, I'm cleaning myself up. I'm going to be more presentable. I found a good job, and I lasted there for a good like year and a half.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so I made like a lot of good progress, but I guess over time, it's I wanted to become more efficient, so I started experimenting into self medication again, and
Oh no.
yeah, I guess that's kind of where things got a little bit more chaotic again.
Yeah, I like want to send you the stuff on the ketamine thing. It's kind of expensive. They have another one that you get like a nose spray or something. It's administered or it's prescribed like online through a doctor. It's safe as long as you go through the doctor that's approved for SP, I forget what it's called, like Spravato or
Hmm.
something. But apparently, people that have had things like bipolar disorder did a couple treatments. I think it was like six over like 6 weeks, and they haven't been on medication since, which is like crazy, especially with it's very debilitating and it's hard for people with bipolar to stay on meds. It's they're
Yeah.
like one of the I, I forget if it's like not compliant. I forget the word for it, but yeah, something to consider. Not saying that you have to get off meds. I'm pro meds, but if there's a way, it also helps with neuroplasticity, which
Hmm.
is like something that I feel like if you have these loops from like OCD, I feel like it would help. I don't know for sure, but I feel like it would help making other pathways
Yeah.
possible.
I would say at this point in time, it's I like the results that I'm having, and ultimately, I don't want to be on meds forever.
Yeah.
So I am going to try to wean myself off of these. But right now is not the season.
Yeah.
But with the workload that's coming through, it's like I can't have downtime. So
My mom
um,
would say,
yeah.
why suffer? Stay on the meds, you know? But people have a really hardcore, people in this country are very anti meds, it feels like. I don't know if you felt the same way. The
Oh yeah,
stigma.
100% there is a stigma, and I even played with that stigma in some weird way. In that's like, oh, I don't want to be on SSRIs or like antipsychotics, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
But the alternative was, oh, okay, so I'm going to be on like some really hard stimulants and weed, and it's just like, okay, that's
Randomly, too.
yeah, that's probably not very healthy either.
Yeah. I feel
So
like,
yeah.
what is there anything that's like, do you find it hard to bring up that you take meds or whatever with like a new partner, or do they not?
I haven't gotten to that experience yet. It's I would say this journey into like my medications and treatment and stuff, I've been going solo at it, and I haven't really been considering dating.
Do you live
Um,
in peace now? It's almost too nice when you're single. No?
yeah, I do. It's there's a lot of luxuries to it, but ultimately, I know I'm getting older, and I want to have family. I want to have kids. So I can't wait forever.
Yeah. Got to pick someone.
Yeah.
Me too, but just like fuck. I feel like with like mental health issues, just functioning is such a people don't really people that don't have it don't really get it, but it's like when every decision is just like difficult and then just staying on meds, taking them at the right time. It sounds so stupid, but just getting like a normal routine, it's hard.
Oh yeah, and I'm still not perfect with the routine, but it's getting better every day.
You don't have to be perfect, you know?
Mhm.
It
Yeah,
doesn't have
that
to
that
be perfect.
that's another thing that I had to learn, even when it just comes to like managing like drug addictions, is that if you're suffering with a drug addiction, you're going to relapse. Yeah, you're going to quit and you're going to go back onto it multiple times over and over again. And the only way that you're going to get better is to not beat yourself up when that happens.
I- yeah.
Just work forward on trying it the next time. Try to cut yourself off, and eventually you'll get somewhere.
Yeah, I feel like the shame can really just exacerbate stuff. Like if you just forgive yourself and you're like, I'll just try again tomorrow, like just being nicer to yourself, it has such a way of, I don't know if it's like getting you into treatment, but the shame is like one of the worst things. I think when parents instill worthlessness and shame in kids, it's really hard to fix it in your adulthood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's especially towards men and young boys.
Yeah.
Only because of there is this sense from like from men to boys to teach them to like, oh, just get over it, just keep moving forward. No, you don't need medications. And it's like I somewhat agree with that stance. Like I do feel like boys need to be taught that, but there
Mhm.
comes to a certain degree where there are going to be some outliers where, some kids just won't respond well to it and they're always continuing to have these problems, and you may want to start questioning, well, is there a mental health issue
Yeah.
at stake here? Is this something that I need to consider?
The research on ADHD, like the outcomes are way worse if you're not medicated and you're a male. It's like more likely to partake in risky behaviors, drugs, other things, addictions, developing alcoholism, ending up in rehab. I forget how they worded it. And I was like, that's like not worth it. It's like you owe it to yourself to just go talk to a doctor.
Yeah. And but also getting into, we talked about age limits for like medications as well.
Yeah.
So that this kind of coincides with the topic in that I believe like 16 and up is probably when we should start considering meds. And it's because also I think that to a degree, people do need to learn how to manage themselves without meds to kind of wean out where is the exact problems where that you can't overcome. Because because coming from my history with the trauma, I had a lot of symptoms across the board when I was coping with that. So that's probably why I got misdiagnosed as bipolar, is because they weren't aware of the traumas that were causing a lot of my emotional mood swings.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas I spent time to try to fix those on my own, and I was able to resolve a lot of those problems just by a lot of willpower and changing a lot of my habits. But then it comes to those few things like the anxiety and the OCD I couldn't come over myself, and that's the mental illness.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you how you differentiate. It seems like some are, I feel like once you live with yourself, you kind of figure out what you can push yourself to just do. I don't know. It's difficult when you have depression. You said you never had depression.
No, it's I would say I probably had depressive moments.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't describe it as full on depression because it wouldn't last more than just like a few days, and then I
Yeah.
just
Like
snap myself out of
situational.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like situational. You could like pinpoint it to something a little bit, but depression's it's bad or it's hard because it'll take out like I forget the exact things, but like serotonin, dopamine, it's so below that like people can't move from it. So it's like if you can go outside and walk for a little bit, it starts to get things firing, but a lot of a lot of people just end up succumbing to it. So the only option is like trying the med and then coming off of it. I don't
Hmm.
know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I could say I could sympathize a little bit with it because of um, instead of like not being stimulated at all in order to do things in life, I'm almost overstimulated to where I'm kind of nullified from it.
Yeah.
Where it's like I get overloaded with the thoughts and the obsession to do something that I could eventually hit these peaks where it's like, okay, now it's like I have no baseline anymore. So
Yeah.
now it just doesn't matter.
I wonder if your dad had it. Do you
Uh,
know?
it's it's very possible he was suffering with something. But
Colin.
he could, yeah,
Colin.
it's he couldn't stay out the bottle long enough to figure out like what was actually the problem. Because obviously, when you're drinking all the time, you can't really diagnose a mental illness.
Yeah, you can't. You literally have to be off of alcohol for like 2 weeks before they can even assess the symptoms, but alcohol sends you in the hospital. Was he hospitalized a lot?
Oh, quite a few times. Like, it's always had problems with ulcers. He had a perforated ulcer, so um and even when he would go into the hospital, he'd always try to escape from the hospital because he's like, coming off alcohol and he's
Colin! What the fuck?
yeah, yeah,
Wild.
yeah, it was wild.
Sounds fucking funny. I shouldn't be laughing. I mean, that sucks, but it's like they do that. I
Yeah,
have alcoholism in my family, and it's just, it's an
a lot of
illness.
crazy stories. Sometimes I would question like how many times my dad was like drinking and driving whenever he'd have to pick me up from school, whenever I got in trouble, you know?
You knew it when you were younger, like he probably shouldn't be driving.
I actually didn't know it. And I question it now if he actually was like, drunk while he was driving because I was a troubled kid. I'd always get into trouble at school. Um, there was one friend that I had where we'd just always get into fights with each other. Just we would make excuses to get into like fist fights with each other.
I feel like
It
that's
was hilarious.
boys. I feel like boys do that shit. Fucking
Oh yeah.
parkour and hitting each other.
Yeah, yeah, and it got to a point where every time we show up at the dean's office, they just roll their eyes and just tell us to get back to class.
No way.
Oh yeah,
You know you're problematic when they tell you to go back to class.
yeah.
But what made you question if he was drinking and driving?
Um,
Looking back now, is that what you meant?
yeah, it's like, well, he always had like you could smell it off of him whenever he was drinking.
Ew.
Yeah, so uh, I just remember every single time he'd pick me up when I get in serious trouble, it's like obviously that odor was coming off. So
Did he
yeah.
get mad that you were in trouble?
No. I think those were the times where I woke him up, and he's just like wanting to get back to bed.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's good. I was
Mhm.
like, but
I think in some ways he actually got a kick out of picking me up whenever he got into fights because it's like he always taught me like, oh, it's if anybody makes fun of you or gets in a fight, just don't worry about it. Just start throwing punches.
wait, really?
Just do it. Yeah. Yeah, he taught me to do that. Just like don't take it from anybody.
My mom taught me not to take shit from anybody, but I've never been told to punch them. Maybe if they tried to punch me. I
Mhm.
don't know. I can't remember what my dad used to say with my brother. Hit
Yeah,
him
he would.
second. I think that's what I would hear. Don't get fucking in trouble with the cops.
Mhm.
Something like that.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing is that with an alcoholic father, there were some moments that were actually good and were some really good advice that I picked up from it, but then the rest of it was just absolute chaos.
Did he struggle with anything in his life?
Um, yeah, yeah, it's so there was like a story where he described where he tried to unalive himself. Um, and
Oh,
when that happened, like nobody in his family noticed. So it's like not only was there some sort of previous trauma to lead him up to that point, but
yeah.
after he came back from whatever unconscious state, they still didn't care. So
Oh,
it's and his family, apparently his mother and father were alcoholics. They passed away early as well. So it's like he just kind of repeated the cycle, and it's like
that's wild that you never developed like it's crazy that you would get nauseous from alcohol. Like most of the time when it's genetic. That's just I'm just like, whoa.
well, I found out why.
Why?
It's so the pulmonary embolism that I was talking about, it's some sort of genetic disorder where I'm unable to process like vitamin B's and folic acids properly. Which is vital in clearing out like alcohol is to
Yeah,
have vitamin B's and folic acids. So that's why I always got sick off of it.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Whoa. Because then it's almost like your body protected you from it by
Yeah.
doing that. It's almost like Narcan, but like in your body. That was
Yeah.
a horrible example. I forget. Whatever the medication is that keeps you from getting high on heroin. I forget. It's not
Methadone.
Narcan. Yeah, yeah, that one. The
Yeah.
one that's it's but your body naturally produces it. but not
Yeah.
that.
Like I
Whoa.
still drink on occasions, you know, if it's like
Mhm.
celebratory or I just want to have like fun on a panel or something like that. But it obviously the next day is horrible, and then I'm just like I'm not going to do that
Yeah.
again and wait like another month or two.
What do you order? What's your drink?
Actually, it's been what was it, Miller High Life lately.
Oh, really? I was
Yeah,
thinking like Mick Ultra or something. I like Mick Ultra.
I used to be a Stella fan. Um,
That one's kind of
it's
hefty to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Um, so I always like the light like wheat beers. That's
Yeah.
usually what I go for. But for some reason Miller is a really good like I don't know, it's just a drinkable beer. I
Yeah.
found it's one of those few that I could actually handle correctly and it
Yeah.
doesn't give me as bad of a hangover.
That's pretty good. Have you ever
Mm.
tried Corona Light? Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's meh.
Eh.
It tastes like water.
Really?
Yeah, it tastes like water to me.
You can get like a shot of Bacardi Limon put into the top of it and you like flip it upside down. I forget what it's called. It's pretty good.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to add?
I'm
Really?
sure there's plenty about it if you could bring it up. I don't have subjects on the top of my head.
You're like the first person I'm interviewing in years. This is big for me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Um, let's see here.
Let me see what ChatGPT gave me. I was like, give me some good questions. I know there was, if you could flip a switch and turn off your OCD, would you?
Probably not.
Really?
Um, it's
What's that?
the thing is there's I wouldn't have been able to learn as much as I did through my 20s without it. The whole idea of having like those obsessive tics, well, you know, it's like that's what I think attributed to a lot of my knowledge in like programming. And I think that's what actually gave me a really good, well-rounded career was knowing all the intricacies of just like programming and computers in general.
So it almost was like beneficial in that
Yeah.
regard. Yeah.
And that's something that I'm also learning with like this medication is that uh, so even though it has benefited me when it comes to just being overall like more satisfied with life and not as stressed. There's certain abilities that I'm actually lacking now when it comes to being able to produce some like really epic projects. You know, it's
What do you mean?
so usually whenever I'd go and be assigned like a really big like programming project, I could grind it out for like weeks on end and just like produce really amazing products. Um, but being on these medications, I don't have that ability anymore. It's definitely a lot slower, and it's
Mhm.
about trying to find that balance of okay, is this just essentially the normal pattern that I should follow, just like this trickle of like you know small updates over time,
Yeah.
um,
I feel like
or
that's the healthy way to do it.
yeah, but every once in a while, what makes like my work so unique was being able to crack out like these amazing products really quickly.
You're
And
gonna get an embolism. No,
uh,
don't do that.
I think we're good on that. I just need to like not get in a motorcycle accident because you know blood thinners can be a bad side effect.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you still ride motorcycles or no?
No, I would like to get back into them, but I've kind of accepted my fate on like, you know, that I
Yeah.
had to stay on these meds forever. So I
Yeah.
tried going off my blood thinners, and the time that I did that, I got another blood clot in my leg and in my lung. So it's like, yeah, I need them. There's no way getting away
Oh
from
my
them.
God. How do you know when you're having one?
So it's a really sharp pain in your chest. It kind of feels like that there's a knife being stabbed in your chest.
Like
Um,
when you bruise a rib and you inhale?
Um,
Or
it's a bit worse than
worse.
that. It's a bit
Yeah.
worse than that, but it's close. It's close.
Damn.
The blood clot in your leg, the DVT, it just
Yeah.
feels like that your leg is turned into kind of like a balloon. You know, it's like, you know, uh it feels kind of like, you know, firm and stretchy and warm and it's just like, yeah.
So what do? You just lift your leg up until you go to the hospital? Like that's crazy.
It's there's a pain to it, but you know, it's like you're just kind of like limping your leg, getting to the hospital, and you take your blood thinners, and in a few weeks, you know, that's when these symptoms subside a bit, and things start getting better.
Damn. You've been through a lot.
It's been fun.
It's been
it's
fun.
there's a lot of stories to tell from it, you know.
That's true. That's true. Like, but that's a lot. And
Yeah.
you're 34?
Yeah, I'm gonna be 35 in a month.
Love it.
Mm.
Are you excited? 35's a big one.
Yeah, I actually am excited.
Privilege. It's a privilege to age. Don't forget it. Okay.
Hey, this is a point in time where it's like I'm financially set and I'm about ready to take some like heavy risks come like next year and maybe like start up my own business. I
Yeah.
don't know in what yet. But I've been planning for this the past couple of years, paying off my debts, paying off my back taxes, all that kind of stuff, and I'm hoping that come next year I could pull some equity out of my house and start a business.
What kind of business would you do? I know you said you weren't sure, but have you been thinking about any ideas?
Yeah, so right now there is one of my best friends. He owns the motorcycle shop that I worked for. He's
Sick.
yeah, he's pretty close. He's about 10 years away from retirement age.
Oh,
But he wants to hand over his business to somebody or turn it into something else. And I'm seriously considering renting out a bay and seeing if I can start something of my own.
that'd be
Of
so
course, starting a race team would be nice, but you know, I don't know if that's realistic. Maybe I'll do like performance mods for motorcycles. Don't know yet.
yeah.
Um, but somehow I want to get myself in there, rent out a bay, and even if I was just doing something as simple as repairing motorcycles just for the time being in order to make the cash, I'd be okay with that.
Even like teaching people how to do it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's like I do think that there is a market in teaching some like Gen Zs because
Oh yeah.
this repairing motorcycles and ATVs are becoming a dying trade. Like, sure,
Yeah.
you could go to the dealership, but all the dealership does is just replace parts. Whereas there, you really, there's a lot more you could do with it. Like, if there's a cracked frame, you don't have to replace the frame, weld the frame. Or, you
Oh
know,
yeah. Wait,
yeah,
that's sick. You should do that. You should
yeah.
do that. Or even
And
like a YouTube channel, but
I've thought about that too. I've definitely thought about that. It would be very amusing because he has a lot of tools, a lot of knowledge, and he's absolutely hilarious. Even though he's like 55, he still acts like a 25-year-old, like riding his dirt bike up and down the street and stuff.
that
It's
sounds so
hilarious.
fun.
Yeah.
I love riding.
Hmm.
I want to. Shit.
Yeah.
I want a job. Like I'm looking for ideas. But yeah, I
Uh,
used to like Google how do you clean out forget what it's even called. The fucking part of the Ducati. Like open it.
carburetor,
I don't know. It was
air
rusty.
filter.
It's been a minute. No, I don't know. I don't know. It's like on the side of the Panigale. Looked like that.
Hmm.
Narrows it down. I don't
I
know.
have I haven't worked on too many Ducatis. I know
That's
they
a
have a
good thing.
unique I know they have a unique clutch pack.
I heard
That's
that
it.
they break all the time, so I'm surprised you've never worked on one.
Yeah, they're just not very popular around here. If you go to South Austin, they're really popular down there.
Wait, you live in Texas?
Yeah,
Oh no shit. I
yeah.
lived there for a moment. It was weird. Texas is weird.
Yeah, I'd agree with it. It's a very, it's like its own country.
It literally is. I mean,
Mhm.
everybody there was super nice, but like the cops were nice. Everybody was nice, but your highway makes no sense. Sam Houston Parkway, I think it was called. It would go in a loop. I'm like, why the fuck are your highways like this? I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
I guess it's convenient, but you miss one exit and you're fucked.
yeah. And so I grew up in Florida, and when I moved to Texas, I always heard the phrase that everything's bigger in Texas. Well,
Yeah.
even that phrase is just like way undermining like what the actual scale is. It's like everything is huge in Texas.
I loved the highways in Florida. I forget what they're called. Like sun something. Fuck. What's it
Um,
called?
Oh, it's well, I just know the Florida Turnpike. There's the Sun
No,
Rail. I know that. That's the
no,
train that goes up and down.
no. It's the name of the highway. Like you go through this. I think you have a sun pass. No.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a Sun Pass that goes through the Turnpike.
Yeah, it's cute. I don't know what a fucking turnpike is.
That's
Ticky.
what we call it.
Oh, why? I didn't know that's what it was called. Just like, damn, we have that.
Uh, yeah, there was always like so I lived on the the East Coast, towards like the Palm Beach area. So when
Nice.
at the toll road and 95 essentially ran parallel to each other. And depending on like, how quickly you want to get to places, you'd either go the turnpike or 95.
Yeah. I didn't even know that there were two. I just remember I was visiting my boyfriend down there when I was younger, and I
Mm.
was it gave me the car for the day. He worked in like a shop, so he's always working on cars, and if he needed one during work, whatever. And I was like going back and forth on this highway, just like you guys don't have to pay tolls. Like this is sick. I live
Mm.
in Chicago, so it's like fucking nonstop, very
Mm.
expensive. But yeah, I don't know. Let me see what else I got on this list. How do you, I think we went over that. What's the biggest misconception about OCD?
I think it rolls back on the answer of like everybody's perception is that person who's like organizing like like different size like bottles and making sure that they're perfectly aligned or always
Yeah.
washing their hands and stuff. Where it's actually more of a thought pattern. It's an obsessive thought pattern that exists, and it doesn't always have to be an external thing.
Yeah.
I like for me as like being OCD, it's the one thing that I struggled with the most was my hygiene, the habits of being able to keep things clean and organized.
Yeah.
um and so that would kind of sound counterintuitive to what people generally see in OCD, but it very well can exist.
Would you say that like the hygiene part would keep you from seeing friends and stuff just because there's like an overemphasis on it if you couldn't get it done and
Oh yeah,
stuff?
for sure.
Really? How do you,
Yeah.
so as somebody that doesn't have OCD, how do you, like, I have friends that have it, and one of them just had a baby, and they have like the contamination OCD, and they're just like, oh, like after the first year when they get their shots, we can hang out. And like I know that they have this I just like don't know. I don't want to show up unannounced, obviously, because I feel like that would like stress them out more. But like, I don't know. What tips do you have for people on how to handle? It's not about me. I'm making it about me, but I just want to see the baby.
um
Like I'm not going to get them sick.
just play with their games and be patient. It's
Really?
like, yeah, that's really what it comes down to it. And because they understand that there's no rationality behind behind the obsessions that they have, but they know they exist, and as long as you like play along with them, it will relieve that stress of having to worry about it.
I'll
And
like
the more
put a hazmat suit on. I didn't want to make them feel insane though if I asked. Sorry.
yeah, I wouldn't go that far, but there should be some level of compromise that you could come up with, you
Because the
know?
baby's going to get big,
Hmm.
and then there. But you know what? I don't know. I don't know. So be flexible. Don't be pushy. Just keep open line of communication.
Yeah, and when you think of it as like the more you can make them comfortable about how the procedure, the more they are going to let off on like being strict on you to be to do that later in life.
Okay. So it's build in trust.
Yeah.
Sounds like trust building. I like want to help them get into treatment, but I don't want to be like controlling.
Yeah, that's one thing. You can't really force anybody into treatment. They just have to make the decision themselves. And that's one thing I learned myself. It's like anytime anyone would suggest that, oh, I actually have to go see a doctor about this, or I might be suffering from like whatever thing they misdiagnosed me with, or maybe I should take these supplements. I never really cared.
Yeah, I
I
just
literally
hate
just didn't
them
care.
more. That'd just
Yeah.
be annoying, honestly. I'm
Yeah.
just sorry that just got so loud. But yeah, let me see what else. What else? We kind of went over that. Do you think social media helps or worsens mental health conditions like OCD? That's a good one.
It worsens.
Really?
100% it does. Yeah. Um, it's so you know how I described the I can kind of like lock in the obsessions to like certain projects and do like amazing work and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes that could also be like, a queue list of like YouTube channels or a playlist or like social media, and you get stuck into these voids that are just
Yeah.
like very unhealthy. It's like they're not teaching you anything good or anything valuable, and they're
Nope.
reducing your attention span. It's just not good.
What advice do you have for somebody that's like they find that they're spiraling? I don't know what I would call it, like going down like a rabbit hole of YouTube videos that they know is causing them more distress. Like, do you have certain mantras that you say to yourself to get you out of it? I know
Go
he's
outside.
go outside.
That's
What
but
could
no,
we
it's
do? Should we be like go outside, touch grass?
it's so and the thing is that I don't think it's something that could be done on an individual level. I do think it requires like an external party, like a good friend or a roommate, to get them to recognize that
They don't want to see us. They don't
it,
want to see us.
yeah, yeah. Um, but
What if we're not there?
they're just gonna have to figure it out.
Fuck.
It's that's the unfortunate part, but this is why I try to stay in communication with some of those people who I think are a little bit more troubled, who do need kind of like that reflection. So then I can just like point it out to be like, hey, you're going down a rabbit hole. Your thoughts are a little bit crazy. Maybe you should take a break or sleep on it. Come
Yeah.
on the next day. Uh, it does really, the community really does provide some level of help in recognizing that.
Have you ever, I don't know how to word this question, but as somebody that would fall down patterns like that, do you ever see things like the alt-right pipeline or like even like red pill content? Like, do you see people falling into this as a result of having like underlying OCD? Obviously, we're not doctors, but just curious what you think about that.
Um, I don't think so.
Really?
Because I think with OCD, it's probably only like a temporary thing, and there probably isn't enough time for them to really be focused on that.
Mhm.
Um, it's but this is all just like personal experience from that. I think when it comes to like alt right and red pill, um, I think it's driven a lot by propaganda and fear. And I
Mhm.
think that's what locks people into these kind of like cult habits.
Yeah. Yeah. There was some study, I forget if it was like the FBI that posted it, but something, or maybe it was like Rob Henderson, totally two different sides of the spectrum, but it was something like uh, they attributed I forget his name, like Elliot Rogers and people that would commit crimes as having OCD. And I was like, how can you make that correlation? First of all, second of all, what do you think about that? Do you think that's really unfair? I feel like it was. I was like, I feel like they're non-violent most of the time.
I actually don't understand the correlate all that much, and I probably don't know enough about the case. So,
That's
uh,
fair.
yeah,
That's fair.
I can't say I have many comments on that.
Okay, I'm gonna send you the thing because I was like, "Damn, that's wild." That like news. I remember news, like MSNBC, which is like an animal of its own. They were talking about it. It was when that whole Elliot Rogers thing came out, and they were like brush stroking it as like OCD is something to fear. First of all, I just thought it
Mm.
was wild, but yeah, I don't know. Let me see what else. Let me see. Said that. Said that. Da, da, da. There's stuff on like the correlation between religiosity and OCD, but I feel like you said you didn't have religious stuff only when you did acid. Is that what
Mhm.
you said? Or yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah, and then also, I never really got into like religions or philosophy all that much until I was actually properly medicated, and I can actually focus a little bit more on those things.
Yeah. And it was positive, right?
Mm, yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that I can't say that like I'm a hard Christian. I identify as non-denominational Christian, and a bit of a fence sitter.
And a
So
fun center. I love the
yeah.
honesty.
Hmm.
Hey, yeah. I don't know. Is there anything you, as somebody with OCD, that you look at the world and you just think like it's like you like can't understand why people operate a certain way? Like I'll give an example. Like I, after dealing with somebody who had like a psychotic disorder, I will always see people talking about their horoscopes and shit as being like on the spectrum to being
Hmm.
like on the same level. Obviously it's not, but you start to like see more things that maybe weren't obvious. Do you have something like that or not really?
Um, yeah, so I could describe it as I am very observant to detail. So whenever an object has been moved, I know about it, even if it's just the slightest. Um,
So we can't rob you secretly.
yeah,
God,
yeah, and what's the thing is that I've always like lived in clutter. So even when it comes to the hundreds of objects that may be around, I know when one
he
has
knows.
moved.
He
Yeah.
knows.
So and whenever I talk to people, I realize that they really don't look into the finer details of things that much unless they're told to do so, or unless they have an objective to like really observe like what they're looking
Yeah.
at.
So you look at details before the bigger picture.
Oh yeah, I could just yeah,
I feel
that's a
like,
good way to describe it.
yeah. Wow, that's kind of like I don't know, and I think the opposite. So when I hear somebody doing the reverse, it's goals. But like that's probably ignorant to say. I probably shouldn't say that, but it's like there's so much there's like a beauty to that.
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know,
Um,
ticky tack.
yeah, I could see like for myself looking into the finer details of things. It can make like really large projects overwhelming at times.
Oh,
Um,
see,
yeah,
god damn
because
it.
so there is like there's a give or take on everything.
You said something in the beginning, like how before you were medicated, that you would take criticism really bad or like rejection bad in the workplace. I'm
Yeah.
like, is that like, what do you call it? Like when you would have, do you have quarterly reviews at your job or is that only like corporate? Sorry, I've never
Um,
had a big girl job.
yeah, there's kind of quarterly reviews. It's just more of like my manager and I are just uh go to a meeting and be like, "Hey, how things are going? You're getting good compliments everywhere, but there's other things that you may need to work on, like this and that." And I was like, "Okay, I'll do better." And yeah,
Is
it's
it
just
stuff that you're like, yeah, that makes sense, or like, no, fuck you?
no, it's it all makes sense. And I
Oh,
try
that's
to yeah, I try to approach criticism now. It's as something that just will help improve my life. It's not criticism is not to insult me; it's to make me better. It's and used to I would take insults from it. Now I can't say this attributes to anxiety or OCD. I think it attributes more to like the
um,
habit building and trauma that came from my father because literally like every single thing that he would have to say to me was like super critical and I would overreact to it. And
yeah.
so whenever somebody in
Wait,
a
wait,
normal
wait.
life
You didn't overreact to it. Don't say that. Keep going. No, no.
yeah, it's I guess I never had a baseline for how to react towards it on that level, but in real life when people would give me criticism, that's when I'd overreact
Yeah.
because I would always attribute the past of how my dad was handling things, and I would completely misinterpret the objective as to why people were giving me criticism.
Whoa, that's like heavy self-awareness. I wouldn't have even, that makes sense though. I
Mm,
guess I just looked at how like nobody likes to criticize somebody or tell them like, hey, you need to work on this. Like it's really difficult to do that. So if somebody's going to say that to me now, I try to take it in because I don't know. Have you ever tried to criticize somebody at their job? It's not easy. It's kind of like, ugh. But yeah,
I think yeah, it's I have given criticism, and it hasn't always like ended well because it's that same deal of like how my
they
father and I would communicate. It's I would maybe be a little bit too harsh.
yeah.
So I had to like learn how to tone back in my approaches on being able to give criticism.
There's an art to it.
Mhm.
Honestly, I remember my bosses. I would not take it well. I did not take it well, and I was aware of it later. But when I stepped into their shoes, I was like, "Oh fuck, that's really hard to like try to critique somebody." And then people would meet me with like, "No, I didn't do that." And I'm like, "You did. I've been thinking about how to bring this up to you, you know."
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
it is what it is. There's an art to being able to tell somebody without making it appear like that's what you're doing. I can't do it, but there's an art. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, though, the dynamic between like corporate world and working in like let's say like a construction world or like roughnecking or like the mechanic world that I was in. Um, like as a mechanic, throwing criticism, you can yell and scream at each other and get pissed off at each other, and everything's cool. It's like nobody takes offense to anything.
Yeah.
In a corporate world, you definitely have to kind of like baby your way into communicating. You have to be nice. You have to just kind of like keep your tone down on how you present your criticism. It's a completely weird dynamic difference that you get between these worlds.
I guess like when I would bartend, I worked in nightlife and it was super competitive. And so if you had a boss criticizing you, your days are numbered. So like, I guess I just developed this pattern of like, no, I didn't do that.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I absolutely did. It was bad. So
yeah.
I thought it was going to be like that with corporate when you were mentioning that. But when you said baby them, I was like, damn, they didn't fear for their job loss.
Uh,
Base.
I th- I think the difference comes in is because of the type of profession. So when you're like bartending or doing like service work and things like that, you're kind of seen as replaceable or expendable in a lot of ways. So, um, whereas the corporate world that I'm working in is that it's a bunch of engineers that have a unique place in their spot, and to lose them, it would be like a huge detriment to the project, to the team, and to the business itself.
Do they
Uh,
spend a lot of money to train you guys or no?
no, it's
Okay.
the thing is that uh, it's it's expected that when you get hired in, you already know how to do the job. Um, so they're hiring you very for a very specific task to complete a very specific project.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, it's and I'm kind of a shoo-in because I know a lot of different languages. I've had a lot of experience, so it doesn't matter what the project is. You could throw me in.
How many languages do you know?
Um, Everything except Python.
Oh shit, you're talking about fucking coding. It's like, wait, what do you mean? I like fucking
Oh
Polish?
yeah, yeah.
I'm
No,
done.
yeah, no.
Wait,
It's
you know
like
how to do that? I downloaded Python and then I couldn't figure out how to open it. Oh,
uh, I don't know Python. It's that's pretty much it. I could
you
do
can
everything
you,
else.
you can just ask ChatGPT how to do all of it. Yeah, wasn't that one of the big things? It's like people.
Surprisingly, it's not all that effective.
Damn it, Janet. That's what I call my chat GPT. God damn it. So now they can't do it?
Well, the thing is that if you're just kind of like a low tier programmer, then yeah, Chat GPT would probably be faster. But in my line of work with the how complex things are, if you were to go to Chat GPT and ask it for a particular function,
Yeah.
you'd be spending so much time trying to fix and debug the function that it produced that you might as well have just written it yourself.
Really?
Yeah. So it's Chat GPT kind of becomes a waste of time in my industry.
Huh. Dang it. Dang.
It's because we're experimenting with things that really haven't been tried before. So it's like ChatGPT can only produce the things that have been done before.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't realize coding was like that at all, actually. I always thought it was just uh, automated stuff. Like
Yeah,
automated in the sense that it's like very well known. You just have to figure out which function you put in. I didn't know it's changing nonstop.
yeah, it's constantly changing, and the
Sounds
thing,
fun.
yeah, it can be. It could also be frustrating. It's it's a topic for another day. I could go into a lot of tangents on this subject.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's all good.
I love that shit. I'm a tangential thinker. Okay. Everybody's the chat's going nuts. Thank you for the super chat. Tell him Sigma without telling him I don't know. I don't know him this. Mike? Do you know Mike? I don't
No.
know. I don't know Mike. I don't know what he means by that.
I think there's a terminology Sigma male or something. It's I don't know what
Do
exactly
you
the reference is
identify
to.
as a Sigma?
I identify as me.
Yeah, right. We're like, what the fuck? I'm a beta.
Mm.
And then we got, whoa, TickyTack. You're great. I want to have you on more.
What's up, Siege?
You know, Siege. Yeah,
Yeah.
Siege is from what chat? Fucking Formula One. I'm blanking on your name, sir. You know the guy.
I do have a little bit of a following. It seems like people do hop on whenever they see my face.
Yeah, I was like, oh, you got the camera on. Sick.
I
Normally,
I I try to.
yeah, I don't think I've ever have I? Maybe. I don't know.
Uh, so it's like if it's scheduled ahead, I'll get on because I could set everything up just right. I guess a little bit of those OCD ticks still exist. I want to make sure I'm a bit presentable and I can be in front of
Yeah.
the camera. Otherwise, yeah, I'm just like
I'm like
standing
a
up microphone.
night. I feel like I'm a nightmare. Anybody with ADHD must be like a nightmare to you. Feel maybe a
Just
little.
no, they could be fun.
Really?
It's well, yeah, because it's like I could be caught up in my OCD like obsession, but then the ADHD person would be like, "Ooh, check out this fidget spinner that I have," and it's like, "Oh,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
yeah, I could get distracted on that."
Oh shit. Actually, we do have a superpower. Actually, we're probably good for each other. That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, sometimes I'm like, maybe that's just the ADHD in me. We grow up with low self-esteem just from like, uh, I could go on. It's okay. But anyways, I don't know, Ticky Tack. I got nothing. I feel like that was really interesting. I feel like we should do this again.
Yeah, I'm down for it. I have plenty of stories to talk about.
Do you have a channel?
No, not really.
Okay, so
Um,
you just pop in.
yeah, it's I try to help out other people. I don't help out myself that much.
I was like, wait, that kind of sounded mean to yourself. I was like, wait, what? All right, well, I guess this is where we part ways.
Yep.
Anything else you want to tell people for now? No?
No, it's things are good. I will say thank you very much for the chat to joining us. For this viewing experience,
Hell yeah.
and thanks a lot, Torshaa, for having me on this interview.
No problem. Thanks for coming on.
Mhm.
All right, bye, guys. And bam. I always get so